On the day I died on the delivery table, my husband was holding another woman's hand, forcing me to kneel and apologize. They worked together to stage a car accident, stealing my daughter 8 years ago. Then, when I was 9 months pregnant, they shoved me forward as a scapegoat and sent me to my death. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Before I passed out from blood loss, I signed my will, mailed out the evidence, and set in motion a trap I had laid long ago. 3 days later, hidden videos, medical records, and financial trails were exposed all at once. Public opinion exploded. The entire city was shaken. They thought they'd won because I was dead. They didn't know my counterattack began at that very moment. I was pregnant, 9 months. My belly was heavy, like I was carrying a burning stone inside me. I touched it and could feel tiny feet kicking against my palm. This was my second child. My first was named Lily. 8 years ago. She was 5. I was holding her hand as we crossed the street. A red truck came charging toward us. I let go, because I was shoved aside. The person who pushed me was Ethan, my husband. He saved me, but Lily was swept under the wheels. I watched her small body fly up, then crash back down. Blood splashed like red paint thrown across the ground. From that day on, every day I lived felt like it was raining. Depression, therapy, pills, involuntary hospitalization. Ethan never left me. He said, "We have to survive together." Our marriage became a hospital ward. He was the caregiver. I was the patient. Last year, the doctor said, "Given the condition of your uterus, IVF is your last chance." We tried 3 times. The first 2 failed. The third time, the doctor said, implantation was successful, but this is the only one with a real chance. I cried. Ethan held me and said, "This time, I'll protect both of you." I placed all my company shares into a trust. 32% ownership. Worth 9 figures. I just wanted peace while waiting to give birth. Ethan cooked for me every day, massaged my swollen feet, got up in the middle of the night to pour me water. The perfect husband. Last night, I wrote a letter to the baby in my womb. "Baby, mommy is waiting for you. This time, mommy will hold you tight. I'll never let go again." There were 7 days left until my due date. This afternoon, Ethan said there was an emergency meeting at the company. I said I'd go buy the last of the baby supplies. He kissed my forehead. "Be careful." I drove out. It got dark. It started to rain. There were few cars on the highway. I drove slowly. In the rearview mirror, a heavy truck was getting closer and closer. Its headlights dazzled my eyes. Suddenly, I thought of the headlights from the red truck 8 years ago. Just as blinding. The truck suddenly lost control. It charged straight at me. I yanked the steering wheel. Too late. The deafening crash. The airbag exploded. My head slammed into the glass. A sharp pain tore through my belly. Blood poured between my legs. The windshield wipers were still swinging back and forth. Through the shattered glass, I saw the truck driver climb down. He walked toward me. The streetlight illuminated his face. My breathing stopped. That face. The face from my nightmares every night. The man who drove the red truck 8 years ago. The same face. He looked at my bleeding body and didn't call an ambulance. He took out his phone. Into it, he said, "It's done." Then he ran. Rain beat down on my face. It was cold. I touched my belly. The baby wasn't moving. My consciousness began to fade. My final thought, he's back. He killed my Lily. And now, he's back again. I woke up in the hospital. My belly was empty. A nurse was changing my forebag. I asked, "Where's my baby?" The nurse avoided my eyes. "Your uterus ruptured. Massive hemorrhaging. The fetus couldn't be saved." My ears rang. "Boy or girl?" "Girl. Another daughter." I didn't cry. I said, "Call the police." The truck driver. "Arrest him." The nurse said the police had already come. They had identified the suspect, Ian, 45, with 2 prior DUI records. But the case had been technically withdrawn. I asked what technically withdrawn meant. The nurse fell silent. Ethan didn't come. I called him 17 times. Every call went to voicemail. I signed the consent form confirming the termination myself. My hand was shaking. The pen fell to the floor. The pregnant woman in the next bed was crying while her husband held her. I forced myself out of bed. Blood was still seeping between my legs. I leaned against the wall and walked to the nurse's station. 2 nurses were whispering. So tragic. Same guy hit her both times. I heard someone high up made a call. The case got buried. Where's her husband? Haven't seen him. I walked over. They stopped talking. I said, give me the address of the police station. They called me a taxi. The driver saw my hospital gown and the bloodstains but said nothing. At the police station, the officer on duty looked at me. Ma'am, you need to go back to the hospital. I said, I want to file a report. Ian, the truck driver, attempted murder. The officer typed on his keyboard. Then he looked up. That case is already closed. The driver has dashcam footage proving it was an accident, wet roads due to rain. An accident? My voice was calm. 8 years ago, when he killed my daughter, that was an accident too. Today it's me again. Is that still an accident? The officer frowned. 8 years ago? Let me check. He checked. Then his expression changed. Wait here. He left his desk. 5 minutes later, he came back. 2 people followed behind him. One was Ethan, my husband. The other was a young woman, holding on to Ethan's arm. Her eyes were red and swollen, like she'd been crying for a long time. When Ethan saw me, he frowned deeply. Anna, why did you run out? Go back to the hospital. I didn't move. I looked at the woman. She hid behind Ethan and whispered, Ethan, I'm scared. Ethan patted her hand. Then he said to me, this is Susan. Ian is her father. My world cracked open. Susan began to cry. My dad didn't mean it. The rain was too heavy that day. The brakes failed. He feels terribly guilty already. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Don't cry. It's not good for the baby. The baby. I stared at Susan's belly. She was wearing a loose sweater, but if you looked closely, her lower abdomen was faintly rounded. Ethan turned to me, his voice icy. Anna, I've already signed the settlement. This ends here. What did you sign? My voice sounded like it was coming from far away. A settlement agreement. Ian won't bear any criminal responsibility. It was an accident. He killed my daughter. Twice. Children can be born again, Ethan said. Every word like an ice pick. But Susan can't lose her father. She's pregnant. Her emotions can't take any stimulation. Priority. I understood. The child in Susan's womb mattered more than my children. Susan looked up at me. Tears still clung to her lashes, but a flicker of light passed through her eyes. Anna, I'm sorry. I know you're in pain, but my dad really isn't a bad person, and I'm pregnant with Ethan's child. I can't live without my father. The air froze. Ethan's expression stiffened. He didn't deny it. Ian walked out from the back room. He'd been there the whole time. The man who had killed both my daughters now looked completely at ease. He looked at me and said, if you're fated to be childless, don't force it. The police stood nearby, silent. Ethan took Susan's hand. Let's go. As Susan passed me, she lowered her voice. Twins. I'm giving one back to you, and still keeping one for myself. They left. I stood there. Blood seeped through my hospital gown and dripped onto the floor. But I felt no pain. I felt only one thing, my heart had died. I didn't go back to the hospital. I went to a law firm. The lawyer was my college friend, Laura. After hearing everything, she slammed her cup onto the table. Ethan's lost his mind. This is attempted murder. I'll take it all the way. She drafted the paperwork. But the next day, Ethan came. He brought Susan with him. Downstairs at the temporary apartment I was renting, in broad daylight, people everywhere. Ian was there too. They looked like a family. Ethan said, withdraw the lawsuit. Otherwise, I'll apply to the court to prove you're mentally unstable and unfit to make decisions. Susan stroked her belly. Ethan, don't be like that. Anna is just too heartbroken. People were watching. I took out my phone and started recording. Ian lunged at me to grab it. He smashed the phone onto the ground. The screen shattered. Then he pointed at my nose. If I'd killed you 8 years ago, you wouldn't be causing trouble now. Consider yourself lucky. I bent down to pick up the broken phone. My hands were shaking. Susan walked over. Fake concern all over her face. My dad has a bad temper. Don't take it personally. She reached out to touch me. I slapped her hand away. She screamed and fell backward. Ethan rushed over and caught her. Anna, You pushed her? I didn't touch her. Susan burst into tears. My stomach, it hurt so much. Ethan glared at me like I was an enemy. If anything happens to the baby, I'll make you pay with your life. A crowd gathered. Someone started taking photos. Ethan scooped Susan up and ran toward his car by the curb. Before getting in, Susan looked back at me. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. Her lips silently formed the words, "You lost." The car drove away. I stood next to the shattered phone. An elderly woman walked over and handed me a tissue. "Miss, wipe the blood." Only then did I realize my hand had been cut by the broken glass. Blood dripped onto the ground, just like on the hospital floor that day. But I didn't cry. I picked up the remains of the phone. The memory card was still there. The video was still there. That night, Ethan called. "Come to the hospital. Apologize to Susan." "No. She almost miscarried because of you losing control emotionally. You must apologize." I didn't push her. The video is spreading online. Reporters are digging. If you don't apologize, I'll release your psychiatric treatment records to prove you have violent tendencies. I stayed silent. "Anna, don't force my hand." His voice softened. "I know you're hurting, but Susan is carrying my child. I have to protect her. Apologize, and then we'll talk properly." I went to the hospital. Susan was lying in a VIP room, eating grapes. Ethan sat by the bed, feeding her. A warm, intimate scene. I walked in. Susan immediately put on a weak, frightened expression. "Ethan." "I'm scared." Ethan stood up and handed me a statement. "Read it." I looked at the statement. It said that I admitted to losing emotional control due to the death of my daughter, accidentally injuring Susan, and deeply apologizing. "I won't sign." Ethan grabbed my wrist. "Sign it." "No." He snatched my bag and took out my phone. He tapped a few times. My phone lost all signal. "When you apologize, it comes back," he said. "And I've frozen your bank cards. Legal fees are expensive. Don't waste our shared property." "Our shared property?" "My shares. My company." "What gives you the right?" "Because I'm your husband, and I have the right to protect you from doing something stupid." He let go. "Now go home and think it over." I turned and left. Behind me, Susan said, "Ethan, will our baby be bullied by her in the future?" "No. I'll protect you both." I went downstairs. My phone had no signal at all. Taxis wouldn't accept mobile payment. I walked 5 kilometers. Blood seeped out between my legs again, but I kept walking. Back to the temporary apartment. There were boxes piled by the door. A stroller, diapers, baby clothes, all brand new. The delivery slip read, "Ordered by Mr. Ethan. Delivered to Ms. Susan." I opened the door. The apartment was empty. Then I saw it. In the corner of the ceiling. A red dot. A camera. He was watching me. I didn't remove the camera. I pretended I hadn't seen it. I showered, changed clothes, treated my wounds. Then I opened my old laptop. I connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi. The password was too simple. I guessed it. I started digging. Ethan's dashcam records. I had a spare key and had secretly copied the data before. His call logs. Years ago he put me on a family plan, so I could still see the bills. Medical records. I had connections at the hospital. The pieces came together. 6 months ago, the day my IVF implantation succeeded. After Ethan dropped me at the hospital, he went to a hotel. Room booking records. 4 months ago, when I first started having morning sickness, he said he was working late. Dashcam data showed his car parked outside Susan's apartment building, all night. 3 months ago, he said he was on a business trip. The plane ticket was booked, but there was no hotel check-in. His car appeared that day at a resort outside the city. The room was booked under Susan's name. Last week, 1 hour before my crash, Ethan called Ian. 3 minutes long. Dashcam records showed that after the accident, Ethan didn't go to the hospital first. He went to the police station to bail Ian out. Only then did he come to the hospital to see whether I was dead. I shut the laptop. My hands were steady. That night, Ethan came. He brought an agreement with him. "Sign it. Give up pursuing any responsibility on Ian's part, and I'll restore your bank cards." I looked him in the eyes. "Did you ever love me?" He froze. Then he said, "I did. Once. But you've been sick for 8 years. I'm exhausted. Susan made me feel alive again. So you let her father kill my child? That was an accident. And the first time? Was that an accident too? He fell silent. A long, long silence. Then he said, about Lily. I'm sorry, but if you hadn't insisted on taking her across the street that day, I stood up. Divorce. He laughed. You can't divorce me. With your mental history, no judge will award you custody. And as for our shared property, you won't get a cent. I have evidence. What evidence? I opened the laptop and showed him. Dashcam footage, call logs, hotel records. His face went pale, but he recovered quickly. So what? Infidelity isn't a serious crime, but you have a psychiatric history, and right now, you're broke. You can't even afford a lawyer. I have shares. They're still under trusteeship for 6 more months. He smiled. 6 months is plenty of time for me to get things done. He stood up. Think it over, Anna. Accept Susan. Accept her child. We can still maintain a respectable family. Respectable? Yes. You're the legal wife. She's the other one. Peaceful coexistence. I picked up the glass of water on the table and splashed it in his face. He didn't get angry. He wiped his face and turned to leave. At the door, he looked back and said, "Oh, by the way, Susan is carrying twins. 2 boys. My heirs." The door closed. I sat back down. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Laura. File for divorce. Now. The second was to a private investigator. Dig into Susan. Dig into Ian. All the way. The day Ethan received the court summons, he smashed on my door. You want to die? I stayed seated. Unmoving. Divorce. Equal division of assets. The shares are mine. Dream on. He grabbed my hair. Listen to me, Anna. This marriage isn't ending. If you dare divorce me, I'll have you locked in a psychiatric hospital. Permanently. The phone rang. It was Susan, on speaker. She sobbed. Ethan, I'm bleeding. Is it because the divorce lawsuit is too stressful? If something happens to the babies, I won't live either. Ethan released me and said into the phone, Don't be afraid. I'm coming right now. He pointed at me. Just you wait. He left. An hour later, he came back. With 4 men. Take her. Where? I asked. To the hospital. Apologize to Susan in person. Otherwise her emotions will spiral, and the babies really will be lost. I was dragged into the car. On the way, I started bleeding. Heavily. The back seat was soaked red. Ethan glanced at it and frowned. Stop pretending. Call an ambulance. I said. Apologize first. The car arrived at the hospital. Susan was in a VIP room. Her complexion rosy. Ethan dragged me inside. Apologize. I stood there. Blood pooled onto the floor. A nurse saw it and cried out. She's bleeding. She needs emergency treatment. Ethan shoved the nurse aside. Apologize first. I looked at Susan. She was smiling. Softly, she said, When your daughter died, there was this much blood too, wasn't there? My vision went black. I heard Ethan say, Kneel and apologize. Then I'll let you see a doctor. I knelt. Not to him. To the floor. I collapsed. In a pool of blood. In my final moments of consciousness, I heard Ethan say, She's acting again. Then darkness. I was floating near the ceiling, looking down at myself, lying on the emergency bed, drenched in blood. Doctors were shouting, No blood pressure. Cardiac arrest. Ethan stood in the hallway, holding Susan. Susan covered her eyes. So much blood. I'm scared, Ethan said. Don't be afraid. I'm here. A nurse ran out. Sir, your wife has massive hemorrhaging. She needs emergency surgery. Sign the consent. Ethan took the pen, but he didn't sign. He asked, What's the success rate? Very low. She's lost too much blood, and if it fails, she'll die. Ethan put the pen down. Then I won't sign. The nurse froze. What? She said before that if she ever became a vegetable, she'd rather die. Ethan said calmly, I'm respecting her wishes. Susan trembled in his arms. Ethan, I'm cold, let's go. He carried Susan away, without looking back. Inside the ER, the doctors kept trying, but the lines on the monitor slowly flattened. A doctor asked. Time? 9:47 p.m. Pronounced death. A white sheet was pulled over my face. I hovered there, watching. No anger, no sorrow, just emptiness. Then I heard a voice. Anna. I turned. It was Lily, my daughter who died 8 years ago. She held my hand. Mom, let's go. My body lay in the morgue. Ethan didn't come until the next day. When he saw my death certificate, he collapsed. He knelt on the floor, crying out, Anna, I didn't mean it. I just wanted to scare you. Susan stood behind him and rolled her eyes, but she immediately put on a grieving expression. Ethan, don't be like this, she's gone now. We should take care of the arrangements properly. She volunteered to handle my remains. I know people. Full funeral services. Very dignified. Ethan agreed. Susan contacted the service provider, but the private investigator intercepted the messages. She hadn't contacted a funeral home at all. She contacted a black market organ broker. She asked, fresh death, uterus intact, how much can it sell for? What about the ovaries? Is the heart still usable? She planned to carve me up and sell the parts, then cremate an empty shell and pretend it was me. On the day of the funeral, only a few people came. Ethan stood before the coffin, tears streaming down his face. Susan held him up, her expression full of grief. Reporters took photos. Devoted husband mourns beloved wife. The coffin was lifted onto the hearse. It headed toward the crematorium, but halfway there, the hearse turned onto a narrow side road. It was raining heavily. A black van was waiting. They were preparing to transfer the body, but the rain was too heavy, the road too slick. The hearse collided with the van. The coffin was thrown out. The body bag rolled onto the ground. The zipper burst open. My body was exposed to the rain. Ethan was following behind in another car. He saw everything. He jumped out. And then he saw the people in the van. Scalpels, portable freezers, organ preservation boxes. He froze. The driver's phone fell to the ground. The screen lit up. The chat window was still open. Susan's profile picture. Ethan picked up the phone in the rain. He scrolled and saw everything. Organ sales, covering up the autopsy, and earlier messages. Ethan collapsed into the rain, holding the phone, reading all of it, starting from 3 months earlier. The messages between Susan and Ian. Dad, hit her again. This time make sure she dies. It's too risky. If she doesn't die, Ethan won't transfer the shares to me. The child in her belly is an obstacle. We almost got caught 8 years ago. This time we won't. Ethan will help me. He loves me now. Then the messages between Ethan and Susan. Ethan, don't go too far. Just scare her a bit. Susan, scare her? Her death is the best lesson. Or what? Are you reluctant to let her go? Ethan, do whatever you want. Just don't drag me into it. Then the messages from the day of the crash. Susan, she's gone out. Ian, got it. After the crash. Susan, is she dead? Ian, probably. She lost a lot of blood. Susan, perfect. Ethan knelt in the rain, his whole body shaking. Then he saw even older messages. 8 years ago. Susan and Ian. Dad, hit that little girl. Her mom is Ethan's wife. If the child dies, she'll definitely go crazy. Ethan will leave her. Are you sure? Yes. Ethan's been bored with her for a long time. I'll comfort him afterward. I'll definitely take her place. The accident 8 years ago wasn't an accident. It was murder. A deliberate plan to get close to Ethan. Susan had plotted Lily's death from the start. Ethan's phone rang. Susan. Ethan. Is the cremation done? I made soup. I'm waiting for you to come back. Ethan let out a beast-like roar into the phone. You killed Lily? Silence on the other end. Then Susan laughed. So you finally figured it out? Too bad it's too late. Ethan, you're an accomplice too. You allowed this crash. Legally. You're a murderer as well. She hung up. Ethan sat in the rain, water pounding his face. Then he suddenly stood up and ran toward the police station. He turned himself in. He confessed to everything. The police mobilized and arrested Susan and Ian. But before the police arrived, Susan tried to flee. She fell down the stairs, miscarried, massive hemorrhaging. Her uterus was removed. When she woke up, she was in a hospital room, one hand cuffed to the bed. Ethan sat across from her, staring. "Why?" he asked. Susan smiled, her face deathly pale. "Because you're stupid." Ian was sentenced to life in prison. Susan was convicted of murder, fraud, and organ trafficking, with multiple charges combined. But what about Ethan? He had helped conceal the crimes, but hadn't personally carried out the murders. Because he turned himself in, and because his lawyer argued he had been psychologically manipulated by Susan, he was ultimately sentenced to 3 years, suspended for 4. He walked free, but outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded him. "Do you regret it? Do you owe your ex-wife an apology? Will you kill yourself?" Ethan didn't answer. He walked away. His company's stock price collapsed. The board kicked him out. He lost everything, except his freedom. But that freedom was more terrifying than prison. On the 30th day after my death, my funeral was held. Laura presided. Few people came, but halfway through the service, a man in a suit walked in. He held an envelope. "I am MS, Anna's trust attorney. Before her death, she established a will with conditional activation. The trigger condition, her death." The room fell silent. The lawyer opened the envelope. "First, upon MS Anna's death, the 32% of company shares in her name are automatically transferred to a public welfare foundation named after her daughter Lily, dedicated to helping mothers who have lost their only child. The foundation will be managed by MS Laura. Second, due to serious fault during the marriage, Mr. Ethan has no right to inherit any of MS Anna's assets under the prenuptial agreement. Third, MS Anna's divorce lawsuit is automatically converted, upon her death, into an asset recovery action. Mr. Ethan must return all assets transferred during the marriage to Susan and her relatives, totaling approximately $23 million. Fourth, MS Anna collected all relevant evidence during her lifetime and submitted it to the police and the procuratorate. As of today, the case is officially reopened." Ethan stood up. "She's dead. Dead people can't sue." The lawyer looked at him calmly. "The will and the evidence were arranged while she was alive. Death was merely the trigger condition. Legally, this is known as a posthumously effective will." The reporters went crazy. Flashbulbs exploded. Ethan was surrounded. "Mr. Ethan, your ex-wife planned everything before her death. How do you feel about that? Do you regret it now?" Ethan shoved through the crowd and ran out of the hall. Outside, it was raining. He stood in the rain and suddenly burst into laughter, laughing until he coughed, laughing until tears streamed down his face. Then he dropped to his knees and vomited. Over the next 3 months, Ethan's world completely collapsed. The company's board of directors voted to remove him as CEO. Reason: moral risk and damage to corporate reputation. The divorce asset division case went to trial. The judge reviewed all the evidence, ruling Ethan must return all transferred assets and pay 8 million yuan in emotional damages to Anna's estate, now the Lily Foundation. Ethan sold all his properties, cars, and collectibles. Still not enough. He went bankrupt. Susan's case went to court. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole. In court, she pointed at Ethan. He allowed it. "He's guilty too." Ethan showed no expression. When Ian learned in prison that Susan had lost her uterus, he went insane. He attempted suicide and failed. The media reported daily. 8 years of conspiracy, 2 lives lost, a mother's silent revenge. My story was written into articles and turned into documentaries. I was called the silent counter-killer. When Ethan walked down the street, people recognized him. They spat on him. They cursed him as an accomplice to murder. He hid at home, afraid to go outside. But even home was no longer safe. Reporters camped outside day and night. His parents publicly disowned him. "We don't have a son like that." He was completely isolated. One night, he received a package. Inside was a photograph. It was taken when I was pregnant, smiling with my hand on my belly. On the back, it read, "Ethan, I truly loved you once, but you were never worthy of it." There was also a small box inside the package. He opened it. Inside were 2 wedding rings, the ring he had given me, and mine. I had taken them off before I died. Now they were returned to him. He held the rings and sat there all night. At dawn, he made a decision. Ethan went to the prison. He asked to see Susan, separated by glass. Susan wore a prison uniform. her face ashen. She picked up the phone. Ethan asked, "Why did you kill Lily?" Susan smiled. "Because of you. The moment I saw you, I wanted you. But you had a daughter, a wife. They were in the way. She was only 5. So what?" Susan tilted her head. "As long as she was alive, you'd stay with Anna. If she died, Anna would go insane. You'd be free, and I could get close to you." Ethan closed his eyes. 8 years. You acted for 8 years. Yes. I acted gentle, caring, redeeming. Susan laughed hoarsely. You were so easy to fool. I said I loved you, you believed it. I said I was pregnant with your child, you believed that too. Honestly, I don't even know if those kids were yours. Ethan snapped his head up. What? I was sleeping with 3 men at the same time. When I got pregnant, I said it was yours. You were stupid enough to take responsibility anyway. Susan laughed wildly. Didn't expect that. Did you? You killed your own child for 2 bastards whose father you don't even know. Ethan stood up and slammed the glass. Guards restrained him. Susan laughed, and then she cried. But I lost. No uterus. No freedom. You lost too. No money. No reputation. Mutually assured destruction. Anna won. The dead woman won. The visit ended. Ethan was escorted out. The next day, the news broke. Susan had been stabbed by another female inmate and died despite rescue efforts. Reason: she bragged about killing a child, enraging an inmate imprisoned for the murder of her own child. When Ethan heard the news, he was drinking alone in a cheap rental room. He laughed until he choked. Then he took out the 2 rings and swallowed them. He was rushed to the hospital, stomach pumping, but the rings were lodged in his esophagus. They were removed surgically. He lay on the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. The doctor said, "You need psychological treatment." Ethan replied, "No need." He signed himself out. Then he went somewhere. Ethan went to Lily's grave. Our daughter was buried there. Beside it was my new headstone. Laura had arranged a simple marker. It read, "Anna, Lily's mother. She can finally rest." Ethan knelt before the gravestone. He placed a bouquet of flowers. Then he stood and walked to the building next door. It had once been his company's headquarters. Now the company had been acquired. Its new name was Lily Public Welfare Foundation. He climbed to the rooftop, stood at the edge. The wind tugged at his clothes. People below looked up. Someone called the police. They arrived. A negotiator shouted through a megaphone. But Ethan didn't listen. He took out his phone and made one last call. To Laura. "Tell me," he said. "Was Anna in pain before she died?" Laura was silent. Then she said, "Very. Her body suffered. Her heart suffered even more." "Did she hate me?" Her last words were, "Tell Ethan I forgive him." Ethan froze. "Why?" "Because she didn't want to become someone like you," Laura said. "Hatred is exhausting." She was leaving to see Lily. She chose to let go. The call ended. Ethan stood at the edge. The wind dried his tears. Then he spread his arms and fell backward. In the instant of falling, he thought he saw me and Lily standing in the light, waving at him, not in farewell, but in release. He hit the ground, dead. The news exploded. Guilt-ridden ex-husband jumps to his death. 8-year tragedy finally ends. My story was fully exposed. The truth of the crash 8 years ago. Susan's conspiracy. Ethan's cowardice. My silent revenge. Society was shaken. People began discussing emotional abuse in marriage, psychological control, and women's vulnerability. Laws were revised. Stronger protections for families who lost their only child. Greater legal safeguards for pregnant women. The Lily Foundation officially began operations, helping tens of thousands of bereaved mothers. My photograph hangs in the foundation's lobby, smiling, hand on my belly. Below it, a line reads, "She couldn't protect her own child, but her story will protect many more." I won, even though I died. The world reclaimed justice for me. I drifted in the light. Lily held my hand, 5 years old, wearing her favorite little dress. "Mom, let's go." "Where to?" "To a place without pain." We walked forward. The light grew brighter. I looked back once, at the human world. Ethan's funeral was simple. No one cried. Susan's father, Ian, Learned in prison that his daughter and son-in-law were dead and completely lost his mind. He was sent to a psychiatric institution. My company ran smoothly. The Lily Foundation helped countless people. Laura got married and had a daughter. She named her Anna. My story was turned into a book, then a movie. The final line of the film read, "Dedicated to all silent mothers. Your pain has been heard." The screen froze on my smile during pregnancy. Light swallowed me. Lily said, "Mom, look." Ahead was a garden. Children were playing. No cars. No blood. No tears. Lily ran toward them. She turned back and smiled. "Mom, I've been waiting for you here for a long time." I walked to her. I held her. A real embrace. Warm. I would never let go again. In the distance, there was a figure. Was it Ethan? I couldn't tell, and I didn't care. I lowered my head and kissed Lily's forehead. "Mom loves you. I love you too, Mom." In the garden, the sunlight was gentle. The wind carried the scent of flowers. I could finally rest. Finally, completely free.